Today on ZZZ Made Easy, we're crowning our newest Void Hunter, Ye Shunguang. This video will cover Ye Shunguang's main mechanics, how you can build her, and some teams you can go into. At the end, we'll cover a few extra tips. This video was made in collaboration with Hoyocreators and uses footage from the creator beta server. There's no sound effects and things are subject to change. Thank you Hoyocreators for the collaboration. Ye Shunguang, or Senior Sister Xiao'Guang, is an S-rank Hone Edge attack agent from Yongkui's Summit. Xiao'Guang is an on-field DPS agent with two forms. She needs to build Qingming Sword Force to enter her white-haired Enlightened mind state. This state comes with a new Ether Veil that allows Xiao'Guang to attack foes with the stun damage multiplier outside the stun phase. She can attack relentlessly and keep the pressure on with the help of some friends. I'll be splitting Xiao'Guang's core passive into different sections. First off, in battle, Xiao'Guang gains the Unity self buff, which grants 30% crit rate and 25% increased damage. No strings attached besides leveling up your core passive, so be sure to do that. Xiao'Guang's unique resource is called Qingming Sword Force, located in the upper left. Some attacks will fill the gauge underneath, and this grants 1 stack of Sword Force up to a max of 6. Once he hits 6 stacks, Xiao'Guang won't fill the gauge up anymore. With 6 stacks of Qingming Sword Force, you can hold basic attack to use Xiao'Guang's entry skill. Entry skills are a new move type introduced in version 2.5. They have different animations and damage profiles, but so far I believe all the entry skills are considered quick assist. If Xiao'Guang enters via a quick assist prompt, then she will use this entry skill instead. However, the idea behind entry skills are that they're able to be triggered with a regular swap into battle. This idea was already present with lighter self-activating quick assist. Entry skills kind of like the official term, plus new animation for the mechanic. Moving on, when using either the entry skill or Xiao'Guang's first ultimate, enter the Enlightened mind state and trigger Ether Veil Verdict for 16 seconds. Xiao'Guang's hair turns white and the energy bar will be replaced with the timer for this state. If you swap Xiao'Guang off field, then the timer will also pause. Xiao'Guang normally deals physical damage, but you may have noticed that she doesn't fill the physical anomaly bar. When enlightened, all physical damage attacks now deal Honed Edge damage. Like the other Void Hunters, Honed Edge is a unique attribute, but it is affected by anything that buffs physical damage. Honed Edge Anomaly will deal Assault and inflict Flinch for extra days buildup. It is a fancy physical anomaly, but in addition, Xiao'Guang's Miasma Purification rate is increased by 50%. Now besides dealing extra Miasma shield damage, the Enlightened state also activates Ether Veil Verdict. This is the second Ether Veil effect, and the screen goes quite dark compared to the whimsical Wellspring effect. During this time, foes gain Veil Vulnerability based on their current stun damage multiplier. Xiao'Guang will basically get the extra damage dealt during stuns, but at any time. This is kinda similar to Trigger's main gimmick. Now every enemy has a different stun damage multiplier, but Veil Vulnerability will cap out at 210% or plus 110% extra damage. An important thing to understand is that when activating this Ether Veil, Xiao'Guang snapshots the current stun damage multiplier. This value is always on the enemy, you just can't see it. When agents who can increase that multiplier apply their effects, the number will briefly show up on screen when it's been updated. In other words, Xiao'Guang can benefit from stun damage multiplier bonuses from Dialin, Trigger, Qingyi, etc. You just need to enter the Enlightened mind state after these effects are applied. This can apply to Lycon as well, but Lycon only increases the stun damage multiplier if he hits the foe during a stun. This leads us to the last sentence. When Ye Shunguang deals damage, the actual stun damage multiplier is ignored and replaced by Veil Vulnerability. If you entered Enlightened Mind earlier than triggered the stun with Lycon, Xiao'Guang will not get the new higher stun damage multiplier because she's ignoring it. You should also know that only Xiao'Guang benefits from the Veil Vulnerability. Even if your other agents have off-field attacks like Orphe, they won't deal extra damage unless the actual stun phase is occurring. Last part of the core passive, I promise. Whenever extra Qingming Sword Force is gained that exceeds the limit, they're converted into 1 stack of Bearer up to 3 times. Bearer is the red icon under Xiao'Guang's HP bar. Now when the next Enlightened Mind state ends, all Bearer stacks are converted back into Qingming Sword Force stacks. In other words, you can save 3 Sword Force stacks for later in case you gain too much. That leads nicely into Xiao'Guang's additional ability. She will need a support or defense ally. When any squad mate activates an Ether Veil, gain 3 stacks of Qingming Sword Force. If she's in Enlightened Mind, these will be converted into stacks of Bear. Now if you haven't heard, in version 2.5, everyone is getting a free Zhao. Zhao is a defense agent who activates Ether Veil Wellspring. She is basically the only agent who would trigger this additional ability. While Lucia can fit this bill, her sheer force buffs don't suit Xiao'Guang, and Lucia will extend the timer of her Ether Veil. Xiao'Guang's additional ability specifies the ally must activate Ether Veil. Zhao will end the current Ether Veil, then activate a new one which meets this condition. I'd like to take a moment to discuss what makes Xiao'Guang so different from the typical attacker or even Rupture Agent. Her main goal is to build up 6 Qingming Sword Force to become Enlightened. Besides getting access to her strongest moves, Ether Veil Verdict applies Veil Vulnerability, which acts like having the stun damage multiplier active without getting a stun. Instead of waiting for a stun to use your attacker's burst damage moves, Xiao'Guang would just assault the enemy at any time. She doesn't care about stuns as much because her damage while Enlightened will be the same. With that said, Xiao'Guang has pretty low days buildup, or at least it's noticeable. Most attackers or Rupture Agents have like 93 to 95 impact, Xiao'Guang has 83. Stuns are just slower with Xiao'Guang, which is fine for her, but it does affect the flow of certain boss fights. You will need to adjust and try to make sure her combos don't get wasted if the boss has an invulnerability phase. Okay, we talked about what Qingming Sword Force stacks are used for, but how do we build up stacks while on field? Xiao'Guang's basic attack string consists of 4 parts. The full combo builds 100% gauge or 1 stack of sword force. The second and fourth basic attack sword rain moves will build up the most amount of gauge. The second basic gets up close before creating some distance and sending out the swords. From what I can tell, the third basic teleport and the fourth basic upward attack have iframes. They're definitely good safe moves to finish. Xiao'Guang's dodge counter is decently quick and grants about 25% gauge. If you keep attacking, this chains into the second basic, and finishing the combo will give over 100%, aka 1 stack of sword force. Xiao'Guang's quick assist has the same animation as the dodge counter. It does less damage, but it also grants 0 sword force. It's a bit strange, but it is what it is. Xiao'Guang's regular special is a nifty move. Normally this is a ranged attack that grants 0 sword force. However, if you have a dodge chance and you time the special right before getting hit, you can trigger a perfect dodge. This causes Xiao'Guang to fire off a stronger perfect special attack, and she gains an impressive 60% gauge. Getting the perfect special allows Xiao'Guang to chain into her second basic attack, and if you complete the full combo, then that builds a little less than 150% gauge. Similar to Evelyn, try to use this perfect special in place of your dodge counter when possible. Now the description doesn't mention it, but you can actually chain this perfect special into the third basic if you wait till the sword case stops glowing. Third plus fourth basic has full iframe safety. You lose a little bit of gauge buildup, but you still get at least 1 full stack of sword force. Use this version if the enemy is using a longer lasting attack. Last regular on-field move I want to showcase is Xiao'Guang's EX special, Gale Suppression. For 60 energy, Xiao'Guang does a barrage of attacks and this grants 1 Qingming Sword Force. This is a great move to start, then swap out. If you don't need to leave, Xiao'Guang has full iframes and can chain to her 4th basic directly. That combo will grant about 140% gauge total. One tactic I like to do is build up 5 stacks of sword force, then use EX special. Xiao'Guang will get the last stack of sword force and I can swap out to rebuff. I can then bring Xiao'Guang back in with her entry skill to go right into the Enlightened Mind state. On that note, onto the Enlightened state moves. Our goal in this state is to use the 6 Qingming Sword Force stacks we built up to get access to stronger moves, and then end with one of 2 finishers before exiting Enlightened Mind. One way to spend Sword Force is by holding special. Xiao'Guang will consume 1 stack to do EX special, Soaring Light, until she's out of stacks. If you keep holding special with no Sword Force, Xiao'Guang will begin her finisher, EX special Return to Dust. The 6 Soaring Lights into Return to Dust will do a decent burst in a short amount of time, but the finisher will also end Enlightened Mind immediately. After all our hard work, that's no fun, but this can be a viable tactic if you're just short on time. I glossed over it earlier, but you can also become enlightened by using Ultimate Chasing Storms. For 3000 decibels, Xiao'Guang gains 6 Qingming Sword Force and becomes enlightened while launching a pretty strong attack. If you hold special with no sword force instead of Return to Dust, Xiao'Guang does her second finisher, aka her second ultimate, Cleaving Heavens. This move is a straight up spectacle and it has an insane 6000% damage multiplier. That's because it also lasts forever. While Enlightened state only lasts for 16 seconds, luckily Xiao'Guang's 2 finishers will not end the Enlightened state until they finish. However, if you're in a major rush, you don't even need to use all the sword force stacks for Soaring Light. Just press the ultimate button and Xiao'Guang would do Return to Dust if you became enlightened with the entry skill. The ultimate icon would change to a new blue icon to symbolize their finisher is Return to Dust. Now if Xiao'Guang became enlightened via her ultimate by spending 3000 decibels, then she would do Cleaving Heavens instead. The ultimate symbol would be the same as usual. The different symbols are useful if you're going to be using Dylan. Her extra ultimate will start with Chasing Storms, but it does not grant Cleaving Heavens. Just to point out, if you use Dylan's extra ultimate while becoming enlightened without Chasing Storms, then Xiao'Guang will use Cleaving Heavens. Normally I wouldn't do this, but if you're at the end of a fight, it may be something to consider. Instead of doing 6 Soaring Lights, Xiao'Guang has ground and airborne moves while Enlightened. When you enter Enlightened Mind state, she will start in the air. Press basic attack 2 times to do 2 Sunderlight attacks. Press it a 3rd time for Annihilation, which transitions to the ground. Do a 4th basic and Xiao'Guang will now do a single maximum slash. I will call this the Sunderlight combo, and the entire sequence has iframe/blocks built in. For 2 Sword Force, Annihilation will get empowered, and the maximum slash costs 1 Sword Force to even do. This combo consumes 3 out of our 6 Sword Force, and we want to do it twice per Enlightened state. To get back into the airborne state, you can do 3 basic attacks after maximum. Xiao'Guang has 3 ground basics, but if you have any Sword Force available, the 3rd basic becomes Skyward Ascent. Once in the air, you can do a 2nd Sunderlight combo. After the 1st airborne state, if you try to do these Sunderlight attacks a 2nd time, Xiao'Guang will end up doing both slashes with 1 button press. I guess she's no longer posing to look cool, it's serious combo time. So far, we've just pressed the basic attack button. To get more technical, I need to talk about Annihilation more. When you do Annihilation and consume 2 Sword Force, then Xiao'Guang also gains 1 stack of Culmination. Culmination is a white version of the bear icon. When you try to do Soaring Light, Xiao'Guang will consume Culmination instead of Sword Force. We can normally do 2 Annihilations, but Xiao'Guang can only hold 1 Culmination at a time. To make room for the 2nd Culmination stack, you can press special after any maximum slash. This will trigger Soaring Light, and that consumes 1 Culmination. Activating Soaring Light in this fashion will automatically trigger Skyward Ascent. This is essentially a shortcut to get back into the air. That brings us to what I call the full Enlightened combo. Enter Enlightened Mind, then do 4 basics for the Sunderlight combo. You press special for Soaring Light plus Skyward Ascent, then do another Sunderlight combo. The 2 Sunderlight area moves happen with 1 button press, but it's the same thing as before. There's no Bondway quick inputs, I just ran out of space. Now, after you do your 2nd maximum slash, we have spent all 6 Sword Force. We still have 1 combination, so hold special to do another Soaring Light plus Skyward Assault, and then Xiao'Guang will start her finisher. To be honest, the Enlightened combo is kind of busted because it's just entirely safe to do. Xiao'Guang will literally just ignore whatever the enemy is doing. That brings up the question, is there a reason not to do the Enlightened combo every time we enter the Enlightened state? The main flaw of the Enlightened combo is that it isn't hard to do, it just takes a long time. Sure, Xiao'Guang is completely safe, but what if my buffs run out? Do I ignore boss mechanics that are happening, or what if the boss goes invulnerable? What happens if I trigger a chain attack? The Qingming Sword grants incredible power in the Enlightened state, but is it worth forgetting everything else going on around Xiao'Guang? Interacting with the enemy and your allies is where the skill ceiling of Xiao'Guang's kit becomes more apparent. Let's try to tackle some of the questions I posed just now. If I know the boss is about to go invulnerable or I just need to hurry up, we can shorten the Enlightened combo. Instead of doing the 2 Sunderlight attacks, press special while airborne to start Annihilation directly. Press basic attack for the maximum slash, then chain into Soaring Light plus Skyward Ascent like before. You repeat the same moves, then do the finisher. We do lose the Sunderlight slashes, but this version still uses all 6 Sword Force and 2 combination stacks. Doing 2 Annihilations and maximum slashes are our main goal. For another minor time saver, you can press special after Annihilation to do Soaring Light via the combination stack. Press basic after to chain to maximum. Normally, you don't want to do this because if you press special a 2nd time after maximum, that will consume 1 Sword Force to go airborne. We won't have enough for a 2nd maximum slash later. However, you can do Soaring Light before maximum for the end of the Enlightened combo. The normal method will add an extra Skyward Ascent before starting the finisher. Doing Soaring Light before maximum will start the finisher immediately after. Next, let's talk about good opportunities to swap out during the Enlightened state. If you start the Sunderlight aerial slashes, swapping during those moves will have Xiao'Guang do Annihilation automatically after. Anytime you do Skyward Ascent to get airborne, Xiao'Guang will also automatically do Annihilation. After starting the maximum slash, Xiao'Guang can tag out. This isn't 100% safe after, but the slight delay can allow someone like Nicole to apply her debuffs for extra damage. Last, you probably should swap out during the entire Return to Dust finisher. As soon as Xiao'Guang gets to the top, she's gonna commit to the move. After swapping out, we gotta swap back in, right? Xiao'Guang is most vulnerable while grounded, but if you try to do a dodge counter, then it's actually replaced by Skyward Ascent. If you swapped out after the first Sunderlight combo, you should still have 3 Sword Force. Dodge counter to get airborne, and then just do the 2nd Sunderlight combo from there. To mix things up, you can press special right before getting hit. Like her regular special, this Enlightened Clean Exit move can trigger a perfect dodge. Instead of bonus sword force, the reward for this is being able to chain into maximum by pressing basic attack. If you do this, Xiao'Guang can skyward ascend after with another basic attack. Hopefully, this section showed what else Xiao'Guang can do besides full committing to the Enlightened combo. Swapping out is okay, but when you come back in, you want to get back to doing Annihilation or Maximum, so you're using up your sword force stacks. One more thing to discuss for now, chain attacks and the actual stun phase. Xiao'Guang has pretty long chain attack animations. From what I can tell, the regular chain attack builds about 25% gauge, which isn't that crazy. Now, if you're already enlightened, the chain attack will put Xiao'Guang back into the air. Xiao'Guang will not exit the enlightened state during this move, so if things happen and you run out of time, you can also hold special to chain into Soaring Light / the finisher directly. Touching on a point from earlier, Xiao'Guang doesn't really care about the stun damage multiplier during the stun phase. However, her teammates do. If you want to run a second DPS like Seed or Orphe, prioritize using their burst moves or ultimates during the stun. Xiao'Guang is on her own timer when enlightened, and that timer pauses when she's off field. If the boss isn't going to go invulnerable after the stun, then Xiao'Guang can just come back in later to finish her own moves. As we move into the build section, I want to highlight that Xiao'Guang's core passive level ups will grant crit rate. With the maxed out Unity self buff, she gets nearly 50% crit rate out of the gate without doing anything. As if that wasn't enough, her specialized drive disc set, which we'll talk about later, can grant another 10 to 20% crit rate. This means Xiao'Guang basically sits at 70% crit rate without W engine or disc stats. She makes it really easy to focus on getting crit damage or attack instead. Xiao'Guang's signature W engine is Cloud Cleaver Radiance. It has a 48% crit damage main stat and grants 20% physical resistance shred. If the equipper triggers Ether Veil, you get 25% damage and 25% crit damage for 40 seconds. Now, during Xiao'Guang's enlightened state, she will get 68% crit damage and 20% general damage. The 20% physical res shred is always active, and that's a rare damage increasing effect to have. For other S ranks, you can use Steel Cushion, but Xiao'Guang actually doesn't need that much crit rate. Regardless, she could use the 20% physical damage and the occasional backstab bonus. As for Brimstone, it can work as a pure attack stick since Xiao'Guang does a lot of basic attacks before her enlightened finishers. It's a great choice. You can also use any other crit damage signatures if you got them. A lot will have crit rate as well, but Ambi's can give 88% crit damage. That's all it gives though. For A-rank W engines, usually Mercado Desire is our go-to with its 20% crit rate, but Xiao'Guang may not need it as badly as other attackers. If you didn't hear, old limited time event rewards will be available in the new daily performance shop. Mercado Desire isn't available yet, but assuming it will get added, I would pick it up eventually if you don't pull for signatures often. What will be available in 2.5 is Gilded Blossom, attack main stat, in-combat attack buff, and the extra EX special damage. It's an okay option if you have decent crit rate substats. Now, if you have the craftable Starlight engine, then Xiao'Guang can use it well, although you're gonna want quick assist help for better uptime. I did most of my testing with Starlight engine, and it did fine for a free option. Street Superstar can buff ultimate damage when any agent uses a chain attack, so you could gain stacks with like Jifufu or maybe Astro. It's not my first choice, but maybe this could be a fun option for the agent with 2 ultimates. For Drive Disc, Xiao'Guang will use the standard DPS main stats. Petition 4 can be crit rate or crit damage, Petition 5 can be physical damage, percent attack, or pin ratio. Last Petition 6 should almost always be at percent attack. For sets, Xiao'Guang will get a dedicated Drive Disc set introduced in version 2.5. Whitewater Ballads 2-piece grants 10% physical damage. For the 4-piece, if in Ether Veil, you get 10% crit rate, and this effect will persist for 15 seconds after the veil is over. Next, if the user is an attack agent and they trigger Ether Veil, you get another 10% crit rate and 10% attack for 30 seconds. As mentioned earlier, with the core passive and after becoming enlightened, Xiao'Guang basically has 70% crit rate. This is why her signature focuses on crit damage and other buffs. If you can get decent crit rate substats, Petition 4 should always be crit damage, otherwise you may overcap on crit rate. Assuming you can keep Ether Veil active most of the fight, Whitewater Ballad is just a really great set. For 2-piece sets, you can go with Woodpecker Electra if you don't want to farm crit rate substats. If you're farming for top tier substats though, then you can just pile on more crit damage with Branch and Blade Song. Pin ratio, Petition 5, and 2-piece Puffer Electro aren't bad ideas against all the high defense miasma bosses, but Xiao'Guang does have defense shredding Mindscapes. You generally don't want to mix those. Unless you really want to run Rena, you could instead go with the 2-piece attack sets or Feng Metal for more physical damage. For teams, Xiao'Guang will want a good amount of field time to build up Sword Force. Xiao'Guang's additional ability will ideally want an Ether Veil using support or defense agent. Now, since Xiao'Guang effectively uses the stun damage multiplier outside the stun phase, you could do double supports or buffers. The standard attack, stun, and support team is fine too, and we have a couple double DPS options that could be fun to try. First off, in version 2.5, everyone's getting a free Xiao. Xiao is a defense agent who triggers an Ether Veil, so she's pretty much the only agent who will activate the addition ability. Xiao can also give a 1000 attack buff with up to 40% damage, so she's a fine all-purpose support. She has some healing too if you need it. Now, Xiao's co-worker Dylan is already an incredibly strong stunner, but her mechanics are stupidly good for Xiao'Guang. Matches physical attributes, grants a general damage buff, and increases the stun damage multiplier by 30%. On top of this, Dylan can feed Xiao'Guang extra ultimates, which means extra enlightened states. Together with Xiao giving bonus sword force stacks, this is an incredibly fun team to play. Next up, Jufufu can support her fellow Yongkui disciple. Just like Shifu, 2 ultimates means more disciple refunds. She can also pile on the crit damage buffs. For other stunners, Qingyi can increase the stun damage multiplier by 80%, which may hit the 210% cap. However, some enemies only have like a 125% starting multiplier, and that's where Qingyi can shine. Lycon can also increase the damage multiplier, but only during a stun. Xiao'Guang kinda wants you to apply that increase before the stun as well. Now, besides Xiao, you can stack another attack buffer like Astra, Yuzaha, or Lucy. I will caution using Astra with Xiao though, because Xiao can't use her defensive assist while charging. Since Astra has an evasive perfect assist, this can mess you up against all the Season 2 bosses who rely on defensive assist mechanics, just a heads up. Now, for her debut banner, Xiao'Guang will have Lucy and Nicole as her rate up A ranks. Lucy's totally fine, but Xiao already grants an attack buff. If you're using an attack boosting W engine, then more attack buffs may be less valuable. This is where Nicole and her 40% defense shred comes in. Even though Xiao'Guang can attack uninterrupted for long periods of time, you can use short-term debuffers like Nicole because the Enlightened state timer pauses when off-field. It's a lot more swapping, but for an A rank, Nicole continues to impress. If you do get some of Xiao'Guang's Mindscapes, you get even more defense shred to stack. For double DPS teams, they may not be the best for Xiao'Guang, but they're really fun to play. C provides great buffs to her Vanguard attacker, and she can feed energy to Xiao'Guang to do her long EX special, which lets you swap back to Seed. Without Xiao, Xiao'Guang will miss out on extra sword force stacks, but that's all the addition ability provides. You know what's better than 3 sword force? 6 sword force. That's what Dylan's extra ultimate basically provides. Now, Dylan's stun extension can help C dish out huge damage during stuns, and you can also save Xiao'Guang's Ether Veil vulnerability for outside the stun. Seed's Vanguard gains another fun member, plus you can still use Xiao in this team instead. As for Orphe, she gives Xiao'Guang all the time, but she ideally wants a stunner or support. You can use Trigger with her extra 35% stun damage multiplier, although it would be nicer if you had her signature for defense shred as well. Trigger is fine with Xiao, but with Orphe in this setup, you will lack any sword force help. At least Xiao'Guang should be on field most of the time. If you don't want to run the free Xiao, Dylan's probably the best replacement thanks to her extra ultimate among other great buffs. You can try non-Xiao or Dylan team comps, but you're going to need to do a lot more work to build up the sword force. Let's talk about Xiao'Guang's Mindscapes. For M1, upon entering battle, gains 6 Qingming Sword Force. The Unity self buff via the core passive will now include plus 10% damage and 20% defense shred. M1 lets Xiao'Guang immediately get Enlightened, and her self buffs get even better, adding valuable defense shred into her kit. Nicole continues to stay winning. For M2, Bearer's max limit stack is now 6 instead of 3. Culmination can now stack up to 9 times instead of 1. While Enlightened, each stack of Qingming Sword Force consumed now also grants 1 stack of Culmination. Last, the Enlightened EX special, Soaring Light, gets 40% defense shred. Oh dear, M2 now allows Xiao'Guang to store 6 Bearer stacks, which means you can now go Enlightened back to back. When consuming these 6 Sword Force stacks, those now become 6 Culmination. Usually we don't want to spam Soaring Light unless we're pressed for time. With M2 though, Xiao'Guang now gets to use the 6 Soaring Lights before her finisher. Those attacks also get more defense shred. Normally, you're not going to stack 9 Culmination all in one go, but I'll showcase how it's possible in the after party section. Moving on, for M4, upon entering battle, gain 1000 decibels. Xiao'Guang's Ether Veil vulnerability now has a max of plus 200%. This means instead of 210% max, you can now get up to 300% extra damage while Enlightened. First off, Xiao'Guang will immediately transform with M1, and then after she only needs a little more decibels to get her ult. As for the Ether Veil, Xiao'Guang can now benefit from higher stun damage multipliers like Qingyi's plus 80%, or just bosses who have unusually higher multipliers by default. For M6, upon entering battle, gain 2 stacks of Lantern Wish. Every time Xiao'Guang becomes Enlightened, she gains 1 stack up to 4 times. If you have 3 stacks, the Enlightened finisher, Return to Dust, is replaced with the Cleaving Heaven's ultimate finisher. Both finishing moves gain an extra 1500% attack added to their base damage. Basically, after so many Enlightened states, M6 converts the Return to Dust finisher into the much stronger ultimate Cleaving Heavens finisher. This will happen after the first transformation, which happens instantly thanks to M1. Alright, so in terms of investment, Xiao'Guang has pretty decent free-to-play W engine options, but her signature gives things no free-to-play engine can. For Xiao'Guang's Mindscapes though, they're all really good, but M2's insane. 6 barrier stacks lets you worry less about wasting sword force, and every single Enlightened state gets to use the newly empowered Soaring Light at least 6 times. It's not a new mechanic per se, but unleashing those limits will be a lot of fun. For the after party, let's discuss a few extra tips and moves in a more casual manner. Regarding Mindscape 2, I don't have it active here, but to get 9 culmination stacks all at once, you would have to do 3 annihilations. Normally that would give 3 culmination and spend all 6 sword force. M2 turns the sword force spent into culmination, so that's how we end up with 9 stacks. I don't think this is the most practical use case, but you would do 9 soaring lights, so that's cool. If you try to hold basic attack without 6 Qingming Sword force, Xiao'Guang will do a funny little range attack spam. It builds sword force very slowly. However, apparently the shockwaves apply to every enemy hit because you definitely build gauge much faster if it's hitting multiple targets. Maybe there could be a niche use for this if we get stages with lots of small mobs. For another fun trait, Xiao'Guang has a unique dash. Like Shifu, hold dodge in a movement direction to fly on the sword case. Very cute, and you get a smooth trail if you're using Xiao'Guang's signature. Xiao'Guang's dash attack is a simple slash that changes into her second basic. If you were to keep attacking after the 4th basic attack, Xiao'Guang does her dash attack instead of the 1st basic. The dash attack actually grants slightly less sword force, which means Xiao'Guang actually won't get a 2nd stack on the 2nd rotation. I skipped over it earlier, but while Enlightened, the 3rd ground basic attack will block incoming hits. Xiao'Guang's Enlightened Quick Assist will use the same animation as the 3rd ground basic. It does not chain into any other moves though. For her perfect assist, Xiao'Guang blocks with her swords and has the regular defensive assist. It costs 2 points against the big boss attacks. Now there is a separate assist font for both forms, and the Enlightened one is slightly stronger. They both lead into their respective 2nd basic attacks. Last, I want to talk about Xiao'Guang's personal Bangboo, Sprout. You may have noticed, Xiao'Guang lodges swords into the ground with her various attacks. These don't normally do anything, but when Sprout uses their skill, they will hop on one of the swords just like their master. This will cause Sprout's skill to upgrade for a little extra damage. Not a huge deal, just a cute detail. Ye Shunguang is definitely a fun agent to play. She can be a one-man army when Enlightened, but you still need to pay attention to what the enemy is doing. Sometimes you can't just do the full Enlightened combo, so knowing when to swap in and out or when to do the shorter combos is useful. On the surface, Xiao'Guang has an easy to execute plan, which is really great for newer players. However, there's definitely room for skill expression for those that can micromanage their agents. I actually really enjoyed the Seed and Nicole teams, even though those are a lot more chaotic. I hope you have fun with ZZZ's newest Void Hunter in version 2.5. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.